Chapter 1466. The selfless sword world dissipated and Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao's primordial spirits returned to their bodies. Seeing that Chu Xiu and Fang Qishao were fine, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Chu Xiu looked around. The demons in the Yellow Springs heaven had basically been wiped out. He looked at Tianhun and asked, "Are they all taken care of?" Tianhun nodded and said, "As you can see, they're all taken care of." However, Chu Xiu still felt that something was amiss. It wasn't because there was danger, but because he felt too relaxed. Apart from the final killing trap set up by Gu Qingcheng, which the four demon sovereigns had worked together to kill him, everything else had been easily taken care of. However, the problem was that they were facing a life spirit. It was Dugu Weiwei's life spirit. How could they have set up such a simple trap? Before Chu Xiu could think of anything else, the Dao sovereign said, "Everyone, the experts and demons in the Yellow Springs heaven have all been killed by us. Let's not waste any more time. Let's seal the passageway to the Yellow Springs heaven as soon as possible." Hearing the Dao sovereign's words, Chu Xiu could only put aside his suspicions for the time being. The many martial immortals went to the South Sea to prepare to seal the passageway. When they arrived at the South Sea, there was indeed not a single demon in the Yellow Springs heaven. There were only palaces of bones there. Sealing the passageway required setting up a formation. Only the Dao sovereign and Meng Xinghe could intervene. However, when the two of them looked at the passageway, their expressions grew more and more grave. "What's wrong? Is there a problem with the passageway?" Chu Xiu asked. The Dao sovereign shook his head and said, "There's no problem with the passageway. The problem lies with us. With our current strength, we cannot close the passageway." Hearing that, Chu Xiu frowned. "Why is that? In the past, you were able to set up a formation that separated the Daoist from the lower realm, so why can't you close this passage?" Meng Xinghe explained with a bitter smile, "It's not the same. Although the Daoist's yuan qi is different from that of the lower realm, the laws of the world are exactly the same. Therefore, our Dao of formations can be used in both the Daoist and the lower realm. But in a place like Yellow Springs Heaven, the power system and rules are different from the lower realms and the Daoist, so we have no way of understanding it. Even if we were given time to understand the power of Netherworld Heaven, it wouldn't be enough. With our current strength, we can't completely seal this passage. We can only build a large formation on both sides to separate the two places, just like we did when we entered the Daoist continent. This method was only temporary, so someone needed to take the initiative to maintain the formation, just like the heavenly gate in the lower realm. Therefore, this also meant that someone had to stay in Netherworld Heaven forever to maintain the formation. Moreover, a lot of people were needed to ensure that it could be passed down from generation to generation. But the question was, would anyone be willing to do so? Perhaps after a long time, they would all be assimilated into the people of Netherworld Heaven. It's easy to open this gate, but it's not so easy to close it. Everyone present fell silent. What Meng Xinghe said was the truth. If they wanted to build a large formation like the Heavenly Gate in Netherworld Heaven, who would be willing to go? As for what Netherworld Heaven looked like, one could tell just by looking at the demons and demons from before. It was not a place for people to stay at. Even if someone was righteous in the face of a great calamity and was willing to take the initiative to guard Netherworld Heaven, after 100 or 1,000 years, when the first generation died, what about the remaining people? The Heavenly Gate was an example. The ancient martial art practitioners of the first generation of the Heavenly Gates had indeed protected the lower realm with the determination to die. However, the sect leaders of the next few generations of the Heavenly Gates basically had nothing to do with the sect leader of the first generation of the Heavenly Gates. The goals of both parties had completely diverged. Even the Heavenly Gate in the lower realm had such a change, let alone Netherworld Heaven. At that moment, everyone suddenly felt an abnormal surge on the surface of the sea. It was as if something huge was surging towards them. Everyone subconsciously looked in the direction of the surging force, and everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They saw a huge mountain floating on the surface of the sea in the distance, moving toward them. However, when they looked carefully, they discovered that this mountain was not floating on the surface of the sea. Instead, a person was holding the mountain with one hand and walking toward them. However, because the mountain was too heavy, the person walked on the sea. Every step he took set off waves on the surface of the sea. The existence that was lifting the mountain was Wuxia Xianxia, who had not been seen for a long time. The eyes of Dao Master and the others revealed a dignified look. Previously, Wuxia Xianxia had made a move. They had thought that Wuxia Xianxia was strong enough, but now they knew that it was far from Wuxia Xianxia's true strength. With the strength of Dao Master and the others, it would not be a problem for them to shatter such a tall mountain. However, if they wanted to lift it like this, they would have to distribute all their strength into the mountain. This required an extremely majestic foundation of power and strong control. Otherwise, if they wanted to lift the mountain, they would most likely have to drill a hole in the mountain. But Chu Xiu's attention was not on this, but on the mountain. The power of the mountain was a bit strange. It appeared to be a deathly gray color, and it was bare without any plants or living creatures. Its aura actually gave Chu Xiu a very strange feeling. That was, this mountain did not exist in this world. When Wuxia Xianxia came close, he looked at everyone present and said lightly, "Please make way." Dao Master asked cautiously, "May I ask what your excellency wants to do?" Wuxia Xianxia glanced at him and said lightly, "The passage you created has destroyed the karma of the lower realm. I can't seal it, so I can only drag this mountain over and suppress it." The expressions of Dao Master and the others were a bit unnatural. They still thought that the appearance of Yellow Springs Heaven was their responsibility. Everyone made way, and they saw Wuxia Xianxia smash the huge mountain towards the passage. The white bone palaces all shattered the instant the mountain fell, and the passage was completely covered by the mountain. Wuxia Xianxia's third eye opened, and the light of primal chaos completely enveloped the mountain, as if it was refining it. In the end, the mountain was shrouded by a hazy aura, as if it was an island erected on the endless sea. No one could feel the aura of Yellow Springs Heaven anymore. Seeing this, Dao Master and the others all breathed a sigh of relief. The passage to Yellow Springs Heaven was sealed, and they finally did not have to worry about it anymore. Compared to the great calamity 10,000 years ago, they were much more relaxed this time. But at that moment, on the distant sea surface, over a dozen people rode the waves. They were not martial immortals, but they were not weak either. Among those people, the leader was Lu Sanjin, and the others were also people from the Imperial Sky Pavilion. This stunned Chu Xiu. Lu Sanjin did not participate in this battle. Zhong Qiushui deliberately did not let him participate. Everyone knew the danger of this battle. If anything happened, Lu Sanjin could leave a seed for the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Therefore, not only did Lu Sanjin not participate, but he also stayed in the Daoist. What did he mean by appearing here now? Zhong Qiushui stood up and asked, "Why are you here? Did something happen to the Imperial Sky Pavilion?" Lu Sanjin said anxiously, "It's not the Imperial Sky Pavilion that has a problem, it's the entire Daoist. While you were attacking, several spatial rifts appeared in Exalted Heaven, and experts from Yellow Springs Heaven descended from them. Although there were no 9th layer heaven existences, there were several 8th layer heaven existences. The Daoist experts have all been taken away. Only the primordial ultimate god, the leader of the previous generation of prime venerables, and 2 prime venerables who were unwilling to descend to the Daoist were left. However, the primordial ultimate god was so old that he could no longer fight. His vitality had begun to dissipate a long time ago. At that moment, he was besieged by 3 8th heaven experts from Yellow Springs Heaven and died after killing one of them. The other 2 prime venerables were only at the 3rd heaven and were also brutally killed. Currently, the only martial immortal in the Daoist was Sky Devil Palace Masters Wuxia Xianxia. He was using Sky Devil Palace's geographical advantage to contend with them, but the situation was not optimistic. Although he was not in trouble when I left, the odds are against him. Everyone's expression changed when they heard Lu Sanjin's words. Although the Daoist warriors were all in the lower realm, the Daoist was their foundation. They were working so hard to resist the arrival of Yellow Spring's heaven because they knew that the teeth would be interdependent if the lips were gone. If they sat back and watched Yellow Spring's heaven occupy the lower realm, the Daoist would be next. That was why they were working so hard to completely block Yellow Spring's heaven from the lower realm. They did not expect Yellow Spring's heaven to play such a trick, attracting their attention to the lower realm while the rest of their forces appeared in the Daoist. However, the Dao Masters and the others did not understand how Yellow Spring's heaven opened the entrance to the lower realm. How did Yellow Spring's heaven open the entrance to the Daoist? Chu Xiu breathed a sigh of relief. His previous worries had finally become a reality. After knowing what had happened to the Daoist, Chu Xiu finally knew why he felt something was wrong before. Because they had won too easily this time. Yellow Spring's heaven should not be so weak, or the arrangement of their life spirits should not be so sloppy. The gazes of Chu Xiu and the others were focused on the four great demon sovereigns as well as the Sword Saint and Sword Emperor. However, 500 years ago, there were many experts in the pugilistic world, and there were as many experts as there were clouds in the sky. Although they were not as outstanding as these few people, they should not be too weak. For example, the sect master of Chunyang Dao sect 500 years ago, the sect master of Sword King City 500 years ago, and so on. Even the demon envoys and hall masters of the Kunlun devil cult were there, but now they were all gone. Perhaps the real goal of the life spirits was not the lower realm, but the Daoist. Chapter 1467. The Daoist situation made Chu Xiu feel that it was a little dangerous. Previously, Chu Xiu had always felt that he was in control of everything, uniting everyone to kill the netherworld heaven and so on. However, in the end, they were still the passive ones. Lord Taixian and the others immediately wanted to return to the Daoist to help. There was no existence of the ninth heaven there, so they still had a chance. However, Chu Xiu looked at Lu Sanjin and asked in a deep voice, "What were the people in the netherworld heaven doing when you left? Is it just a simple murder?" Lu Sanjin shook his head and said, "They weren't killing people, but they attacked the dragon veins of the north, south, east and west respectively. They opened the dragon veins and absorbed the power within. The dragon vein of the south region is in the demonic palace, so the demonic palace became the target. Otherwise, Palace Lord Wuxia couldn't move or take the initiative to attack." Chu Xiu nodded and sighed. He looked at Tianhun and said, "It's too late. He should be back after absorbing enough power of the dragon vein." Tianhun also nodded and said, "It's indeed too late. Previously, he sent people to secretly absorb the power of the dragon vein in the mortal world, but you discovered it. Now, he has attacked the Daoist with great fanfare, and the strength of the dragon vein in the Daoist is far stronger than that in the mortal world. Even if we rush back now, it's useless. What did the life soul in the netherworld heaven need?" Previously, Chu Xiu didn't understand, but after deducing many clues and Meng Xinghe's research, Chu Xiu almost understood. The netherworld heaven was the yin side, while the mortal world and the Daoist were the yang side. Over the past 500 years, the life soul itself might have been assimilated by the netherworld heaven, so it was easy to enter the netherworld heaven, but difficult to leave. If the life soul wanted to appear on the yang side, it naturally needed the power of the yang side. Where was the place with the densest power of the yang side? It was in the dragon vein. Since the other party had put everything on the line and released all his power, it was obvious that he had absorbed enough power this time. The World Lord frowned and said, "You two, who are you talking about? Who was coming back? It's not that this penniless monk is being paranoid, but this penniless monk has long felt that something was amiss. Although the Yellow Spring sky was opened by us, why do I feel that your understanding of the yellow spring sky is even greater than ours? At this point, there was no need for Chu Xiu or Tianhun to hide. Furthermore, they still had to face the life soul. The moment the life soul appeared, they would know without any explanation. So Tianhun sneered and said, "Who's back?" Of course, Dugu Weiwei is coming back. Everyone was stunned. The world-honored one asked in confusion, "Aren't you Dugu Weiwei?" Tianhun calmly said, "I am, and so is he. To be more precise, he is more than I am. Monk, your ancestors were too simple-minded. Do you really think you can seal a person who can't even be killed? Do you really think that you defeated Dugu Weiwei and sealed him 500 years ago? You guys are too simplistic. Daoist, do you still remember the soul-splitting technique left by the Three Pristines Temple in the mortal world? Maybe the Three Pristines Temple doesn't even know it now, right? The Devil Lord is undefeated. Although he didn't win, he didn't lose either. The Ninth Heaven powerhouses present were not idiots. Since Tianhun had already said it so bluntly, they certainly knew what was going on. In an instant, the three of them looked at Chu Xiu and Tianhun with vigilance. The old barbarian king was puzzled. He had only heard of the various disturbances 500 years ago, but he really didn't know the details. The World Lord coldly said, "The heaven and earth souls are always outside, but only the life soul is in the body. Since the one in the yellow spring sky is more than Dugu Weiwei, then you are the heaven and earth souls?" Tianhun calmly said, "Don't be so vigilant. I was just once. Your Three Pristines Temple has done a lot of research on primordial spirit and soul. For example, if a person's divided soul can't share consciousness with another divided soul, or even give birth to a separate consciousness, then is he a divided soul or a separate living creature? Look at Chu Xiu. Does he have a trace of Dugu Weiwei's aura? You don't want to see the yellow spring sky descend, and we also don't want to see Dugu Weiwei descend again. You don't want to die, but we don't want to die either. What should we do now?" After a long silence, the World Lord suddenly asked. Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Fight. Gather all our strength and fight. At this time, there is no other way but to fight." Hearing this, the World Lord immediately turned his gaze to Zhongxinxiu, put his palms together, and said in a deep voice, "Can you help us this time?" Dugu Weiwei came from the yellow spring sky. Looking at the demons and demons he created, we know that he is no longer a human. When he descends, he will definitely bring disaster to both the upper and lower realms. Zhongxinxiu said indifferently, "His appearance has completely disrupted the rules of karma. I will take action, but I can't beat him." Everyone present was stunned. Zhongxinxiu was extremely mysterious in the eyes of Chu Xiu, the World Lord, and the others. Who would have thought that he would say so bluntly that he couldn't beat Dugu Weiwei? You have never seen Dugu Weiwei. How do you know that you can't beat him? The World Lord asked doubtfully. Zhongxinxiu said, "I have seen him." Chu Xiu looked at Tianhun, who shook his head. Obviously, he couldn't find any memories of Zhongxinxiu in his memories. Zhongxinxiu said indifferently, "I can't beat an existence that transcends karma. Even if I can beat him temporarily, I won't be able to beat him in the future." As he said this, Zhongxinxiu pointed to Chu Xiu and Tianhun. "You are all existences that transcend karma, and so is the life soul. There is also the Taoist priest of the Eastern Sea. He is half of one. By the way, there is also Senior Ning Xuanji." The World Lord looked at Chu Xiu. "Cult Master Chu, Senior Ning Xuanji left with him. Do you know where Senior Ning Xuanji went?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Although I know where Senior Ning Xuanji went, I can't guarantee that Senior Ning Xuanji won't intervene in this matter. The realm he's pursuing has already surpassed our imagination. It's even beyond the karma of our world. Ning Xuanji was the same as Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago. What he pursued was true detachment on the martial Tao. Even Ning Xuanji wanted to create his own world and call himself a god. He had a big heart. The grievances of the Jianghu in the lower realm, even if it involved the true martial sect, Chu Xiu wasn't sure if Ning Xuanji would intervene. The most important thing was that when Chu Xiu left last time, Ning Xuanji was experiencing the scene of the fusion of the two realms. He hadn't appeared yet, so he should be in a state of seclusion. If Chu Xiu disturbed him at this time, it wouldn't be good. It would be interesting if he angered Ning Xuanji. At this time, Lu Chonglu, who was in the distance, suddenly said, "Cult Master Chu, you can give it a try." Although I haven't been in contact with the Patriarch as long as Cult Master Chu, I know from the ancient books left by the ancestors that the Patriarch is actually a person with a cold face but a warm heart. The Dao sect is quiet and doesn't like to meddle in other people's business, but it doesn't mean that they won't care even if the sky falls. Cult Master Chu, you just need to tell the Patriarch about the current situation. There's no need to persuade him. Let Patriarch Ning Xuanji choose for himself. Chu Xiu thought about it and said, "All right, I'll make a trip to the East Sea. I'll try to return as soon as possible. Although it's already late for the Daoist, I'll try my best to eliminate all the existences in Netherworld Heaven. I'll leave this to you guys." Time waited for no man. After making the arrangements, Chu Xiu immediately headed for the East Sea according to the direction in his memory. Because time was too tight, Chu Xiu didn't waste any energy this time. Instead, he was surrounded by the yin and yang source energy and directly broke the void with absolute power as he moved forward. When he reached the depths of the East Sea, where the upper realm and lower realm merged, Chu Xiu had almost exhausted all his energy. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that Ning Xuanji was in seclusion, but who would have thought that he was sitting in front of the place where the two realms merged with a contemplative look on his face. Seeing Chu Xiu coming, Ning Xuanji raised his eyebrows and asked, "Kid, did something happen in the lower realm?" "Senior, you know about it?" Ning Xuanji sneered and pointed to the sky. "How could I not know about such a big commotion? But those Daoist guys are also in the lower realm, so they shouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Now that you've come to find me, could it be that there's something that can't be resolved?" "Logically speaking, it shouldn't be." Chu Xiu coughed. "There are indeed some things that can't be resolved, but it's not the lower realm, it's the Daoist." After saying that, Chu Xiu didn't hide anything from Ning Xuanji and told him everything. After listening, Ning Xuanji's expression gradually turned strange. After a moment of silence, Ning Xuanji suddenly cursed, "Damn it! I've been fooled by that old brat, Dugu Weiwei." Ning Xuanji and Dugu Weiwei might not have fought for their entire lives, but it could be said that they had been fighting for half of their lives. Previously, he had always thought that Dugu Weiwei was really stubborn. In the lower realm, he had the final say. In the Daoist, he was even more domineering. Hence, he was beaten up by the crowd. In the end, who would have thought that it was all an illusion? Dugu Weiwei's calculations were even deeper than his. This made Ning Xuanji suddenly feel ashamed that his intelligence had been suppressed. Even Ning Xuanji's gaze towards Chu Xiu was a little unfriendly. Because in a sense, Chu Xiu could also be said to be a part of Dugu Weiwei. In the end, Ning Xuanji snorted coldly and said, "Kid, give me a reason to make a move. You should know that although Dugu Weiwei and I are opponents, we can't be considered enemies. Now that he wants to come back and walk his own path, there's no need for me to stop him. The grudges between you and him are also your business. Why should I interfere in your internal strife?" Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "Netherworld Heaven is the yin side, and the world we live in is the yang side. Now that the life soul has extracted a part of the lower realm and a part of the Daoist dragon vein's power into Netherworld Heaven, it has caused the yin and yang to deviate from the division. I don't know what the consequences will be, but if I let the life soul walk its own path, the final result might be that everyone has nowhere to go. The choice is yours, Senior Ning. If you don't want to interfere, I'll immediately retreat and go to the Daoist to fight the life soul." Chapter 1468. Ning Xuanji asked Chu Xiu to give him a reason, but now Chu Xiu threw the choice to Ning Xuanji again. Ning Xuanji was silent for a while. Suddenly, he pointed to the place where the upper and lower mortal heavens converged and said, "Actually, I've already discovered the existence of netherworld heaven." Chu Xiu was stunned. "Discovered?" "I've studied the place where the upper and lower mortal heavens converge for a long time. I've gained something, but not much. But I found something in it. Some small cracks that can lead to netherworld heaven, pointing directly to the source of netherworld heaven. I wanted to enter it with my soul, but I found that someone's soul had refined its source, so it rejected all external existences. Since you're Dugu Weiwei's earth soul, the core of your soul should be the same as Dugu Weiwei's. Since that's the case, you can try to enter the interior of netherworld heaven and see what's in its source. Of course, there are risks. After all, I didn't successfully enter. I don't know what's inside, and I don't know if Dugu Weiwei will notice. But know yourself and know your enemy. I feel that I should gain something if I enter. It's up to you whether you want to go or not. I'll go with you and meet this old friend of mine, Dugu Wei." Chu Xiu pondered for a moment and said, "I'll go. Senior Ning, please show me the way." Although Chu Xiu's strength had reached the peak of the ninth heaven and he had fused with luck, he had taken a different path from all the other martial immortals. It could be said to be unprecedented. But he still didn't have absolute confidence in defeating the life soul. Since there was no way to improve his strength again, he could only find a way to see how much power the life soul had mastered. Ning Xuanji nodded and tore apart the chaotic rules with Chu Xiu. He pointed to the deepest place that emitted netherworld yin qi and said, "That's it. The crack is too small. The physical body can't enter it. Only the soul can." Chu Xiu nodded. He closed his eyes and formed a seal. In the next moment, his primordial spirit left his body and entered the yellow spring sky rift. The boundless yin qi of the netherworld enveloped Chu Xiu, but strangely, it didn't hurt Chu Xiu. It was just as Ning Xuanji had said. Chu Xiu could come and go as he pleased in netherworld heaven. As far as the eye could see, everywhere Chu Xiu's gaze passed, there was a yellow spring sea of blood, and countless vengeful souls and evil spirits were wailing in it. Here, Chu Xiu felt the true deathly stillness, a deathly stillness without any signs of life. The power rule of life and death did not seem to be effective in Yellow Springs heaven. Here, death intent was still death intent at its peak. There was only nirvana and no hope. Carefully bypassing everything, Chu Xiu's soul kept sinking into the Yellow Springs blood sea. He wanted to find out where the true origin power of the Yellow Springs blood sea lay. This kind of behavior was actually very dangerous. If Dugu Weiwei found out, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape in such a place. However, there seemed to be a very strange feeling in Yellow Springs heaven, attracting Chu Xiu to keep exploring. Originally, Chu Xiu thought that the bottom of the Yellow Springs blood sea would be extremely terrifying, but who knew that the scene at the bottom was somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's expectations. What appeared in front of Chu Xiu was actually a mirror. It was a mirror that seemed to have existed since the birth of the 5 heavenly realms. It reflected everything in the other worlds, yin and yang, life and death. It was as if everything that was born at the beginning of the world could be seen here. Among the 5 heavenly realms, the Daoist Ocean was invaded by the cultivators of the lower realm 10,000 years ago. It was no longer the original Daoist Ocean. Longevity heaven was just a legend. The upper realm had been destroyed and the lower realm had been merged. The only place that could maintain its original state was this Yellow Springs heaven, which was filled with yin qi of the Yellow Springs and had no signs of life. This place happened to be a place that wasn't affected. Yellow Springs heaven was a mirror. It reflected many things that Chu Xiu didn't know before. This made him understand a lot in an instant. He even saw a figure in the mirror, a figure that he was very familiar with. Immediately, a smile appeared on Chu Xiu's face. It was a smile that Lu Jianghe, Lu Fengxian, and the others were very familiar with. It was a smile that Chu Xiu would often show after he succeeded in scheming against others. He finally understood. The next moment, there was a tremor in Yellow Springs heaven. It was as if a pair of eyes was scanning the Yellow Springs blood sea. With a thought, Chu Xiu's primordial spirit seemed to have undergone some kind of change. Its aura became extremely similar to those ghosts in Yellow Springs heaven. He calmly retreated. In the outside world, Ning Xuanji rubbed his chin and waited. There was no movement for a long time. Could this kid have been swallowed by Dugu Weiwei? That couldn't be right. If he had been swallowed, then his body should have been completely lifeless by now. At this moment, Chu Xiu's figure moved, and his primordial spirit completely returned to its original position. However, Ning Xuanji suddenly had a very strange feeling. Although the current Chu Xiu and Chu Xiu's strength had not changed, the aura on his body had a very strange feeling. Even Ning Xuanji couldn't describe it. Did you find anything in it? Chu Xiu nodded and said, I found a lot of things. Senior Ning, let's go. With that, Chu Xiu and Ning Xuanji headed straight for the entrance of the Daoist passage. At this time, in the Daoist southern territory, outside the Heavenly Devil Palace. The originally magnificent Heavenly Devil Palace had been completely destroyed. It was like a piece of scorched earth. Zhuo Qiuliang was on the verge of death, but the good news was that the Heavenly Devil Palace had unexpectedly shattered during the fierce battle. The impact of its power had cut off his connection with the Heavenly Devil Palace, so that he wouldn't be trapped in the Heavenly Devil Palace for the rest of his life. Several Ninth Heaven powerhouses from the lower realm had returned to the Daoist continent and easily extinguished the Netherworld Heaven powerhouses in the Daoist continent. However, looking at the huge spatial crack above the Heavenly Devil Palace, which was still continuously absorbing the power of the Dragon Vein, everyone was at their wits' end. The world sovereign said to Zhongxinxiu, Does your excellency have any way to pull a few more mountains and completely suppress it? Zhongxinxiu shook her head and said, It's too late, he is already coming. As Zhongxinxiu's voice fell, the huge spatial crack above the Heavenly Devil Palace continued to expand. It was like a door, and a huge pressure faintly came out from it. The world sovereign said to Meng Xinghe in a deep voice, Dean Meng, take out the heavenly cycle stellar array of your Xinghe loose cultivator and integrate it with the 3 primordial chaos array of my 3 pristine palace. I will control it. Meng Xinghe hesitated for a moment before nodding. The heavenly cycle stellar array was the inheritance array of his Xinghe loose cultivator. It could be said to be his final trump card. Some of the array patterns had been lost, and as long as they were damaged, there was no way to repair them. But in this situation, he could only take out all his trump cards. But why did the world's sovereign want to control the array? Although Meng Xinghe knew that he was definitely inferior to the world's sovereign in terms of martial arts, he did not think that he was weaker than the world's sovereign in terms of array Dao. Before Meng Xinghe could think too much, a rich netherworld yin qi had already erupted from the spatial crack. In an instant, the entire sky seemed to have been splashed with ink, and it was dyed pitch black. There were no angry howls of vengeful spirits or roars of evil spirits as he had imagined. The entire world was incomparably silent, as if time had frozen at this moment. The next moment, a figure stepped out of the crack. He was dressed in black, and although he looked exactly like Tian Hun, his eyes were extremely cold, like the cold netherworld blood sea. As he stepped into the Daoist land, the netherworld blood sea emerged under his feet, and the white bones paved the way for him. At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on that person. Now, everyone finally understood why Tian Hun and Chu Xiu looked as if they were facing a formidable enemy when the life spirit was mentioned. Chu Xiu was not the Dugu Weiwei from 500 years ago. Although Tianhuan's appearance was very imposing, he was also not the Dugu Weiwei from 500 years ago. It was only when the life spirit appeared that the world's sovereign and the others were convinced that the existence in front of them was the same person described in the ancient books of their sect, the one who had almost overturned the entire Daoist 500 years ago. The life spirit looked at the crowd below, but it directly skipped over the world's sovereign and the others, focusing its eyes on Tianhun. Are you here to stop me? You should know that you won't be able to stop me. I know everything that you know. I know everything that I know, but you don't. Looking at you, your strength hasn't even recovered to the peak 500 years ago. How are you going to stop me? Or are you going to rely on the ants around you? Tianhun snorted coldly. On myself. Do it. As Tianhun's voice fell, the boundless demonic qi around him condensed in mid-air, like dark clouds gathering, but it formed the shape of a towering palace. Suppress. With one word, the huge demonic palace smashed downwards. The rules were sealed, and only the surging demonic qi was left. The Demon Suppression Palace? Using the boundless demonic qi to form a small world to suppress is actually just an upgrade of the domain. Are you still using it? The life spirit stretched out a finger and pointed lightly. The towering demon suppression palace began to collapse, and the demonic qi quickly turned into the netherworld qi. The world's sovereign chanted the name of Buddha and displayed the indestructible golden body. The Mahavirokana Dharma gathered behind him, and the blazing great sun true fire burned fiercely, like a candle flame in the pitch-black night. However, the next moment, the boundless netherworld qi surged over and extinguished the great sun true fire in an instant. A bone spear stained with blood appeared in the void, passing through space and time. It directly pierced through the chest of the world's sovereign and nailed him to the ground. The so-called indestructible golden body, the so-called supreme body refining technique of the Buddhist sect, was like a joke in the hands of the life spirit. It was easily pierced through like a piece of paper. The world's sovereign's body glowed with Buddha light as he forcefully pulled the bone spear out of his chest. With his vitality, he wouldn't die even if his heart was pierced through. However, the yellow spring's yin qi remained on his wounds, preventing them from healing. Chapter 1469. An existence at the peak of the ninth layer of the heavens like the world's sovereign was a supreme existence for the other Daoist martial artists. The powerhouses of the ninth layer of the heavens had indeed fallen in battle before, just like when Chu Xiu had killed the Brahmin sect leader. But this time was different. The world's sovereign had been so casually nailed to the ground by the life soul, as if he was facing an ant. This huge gap in strength was simply incomprehensible to them. But even if they didn't understand and feared, they had no choice but to attack. The old barbarian king looked up to the sky and roared. Formidable power gathered around his body, and his whole body was like a black hole, constantly swallowing all the power around him. Even a part of the yellow spring's yin qi was swallowed into his body. This power evolved into a huge demonic god body, which was somewhat similar to Chu Xiu's heaven and earth law phenomenon. The fist smashed down, and the extreme power of the rules caused the void to tremble. At the same time, Meng Xinghe's hands formed a seal, and tens of thousands of starlight rays came over. In his hands, these tens of thousands of starlight rays each carried a different type of power. They turned into a sky full of swords that shrouded the life soul. The heavenly sovereign also activated the heavenly cycle stellar array and the three pure immemorial array at the same time. The starlight and Taoist power that filled the sky all rushed toward the life soul. Zhong Shunxiu stood in the back, and the third eye between her eyebrows bloomed with boundless chaotic brilliance, which directly penetrated the life soul. At the same time, the boundless demonic energy in the heavenly sovereign's hand turned into a long blade, which slashed down. A bright moon appeared in midair, and an extreme sharpness descended. The clouds parted, the moon shone brightly, and the clear sky reflected the shadow. The power of these people's all-out attack could even shatter a domain in the Daoist world. But when it came to the life soul, it was as if it was an understatement. It simply couldn't cause too much damage to him. In the boundless Yellow Springs Blood Sea, a huge and ferocious white-boned demonic god emerged. It met the old barbarian king's fist, and the old barbarian king was blasted back. The sky full of Yellow Springs blood rain fell, completely extinguishing Meng Xinghe's tens of thousands of starlight rays. The power of the heavenly cycle stellar array and the three clear primordial chaos array made him feel slightly troubled. However, as the life spirit's hand formed a seal, the white bones piled up like a mountain under the Yellow Springs Blood Sea and turned into a large array. The yin qi of the Yellow Springs lingered around and rotated, resisting the two arrays with the power of one array. When the chaotic brilliance of Wuxia Xianxia's body approached, the Fate Soul's eyes revealed a look of surprise. This power doesn't belong to this world, but it's still useless. The life spirit's eyes instantly turned pitch black, turning into an extreme death intent that roared out of his eyes, blocking the chaotic brilliance from the outside world. At this time, the power of the clear sky illuminating shadow had already fallen, but it did not destroy the physical body of the life spirit. It was unknown when layers of white bone armor had appeared on his body. When the power of the clear sky illuminating shadow landed on the white bone armor, it was actually unable to slash at his physical body. It only caused the white bone armor to shatter. The clear sky illuminating shadow can slash the physical body, but it cannot slash the primordial spirit. This is its only flaw. So, in Yellow Springs Heaven, I researched a saber technique to slay the nascent soul. Blood Sea Reflection. A slender bone saber had appeared in the hands of the life spirit. It was slender and sharp, as if it was the rib of some unknown creature. As the life spirit slashed down, endless amounts of Yellow Springs blood gathered in mid-air, reflecting the appearance of the heavenly soul, but it was a golden primordial spirit. In the next moment, the invisible blade had already torn apart the heavenly soul's primordial spirit, causing him to groan. The heavenly soul furiously formed a seal with his hands, and his primordial spirit began to burn wildly. However, the burning of the primordial spirit only lasted for a moment. In exchange, the power directly cut off a part of his primordial spirit, allowing the blood sea reflection to pull at it. The torn primordial spirit also began to burn fiercely. In the end, it turned into a glittering primordial spirit arrow. As the heavenly soul drew the bow and arrow, it shot straight at the life spirit. At the same time, he condensed demonic energy in his hands and turned it into a world-destroying arrow. He shot it at the life spirit again. The primordial spirit and the powerful world-destroying demonic energy converged into an arrow, increasing its power by 30%. The boundless netherworld blood sea surged wildly in front of the life spirit. It seemed to have divided the world into another world. The arrow formed by the world-destroying demonic energy was completely lost in the sea until its power dissipated. However, the primordial spirit was not obstructed and crashed into the life spirit's body, causing him to groan. However, it was obvious that he was not badly injured. The life spirit had cultivated in Yellow Springs Heaven for 500 years. Now, his power and the strength of his primordial spirit were not something that the heavenly soul could imagine. At that moment, the world was chanting the name of Buddha. Countless Sanskrit words condensed around him to form a string of prayer beads. Every prayer bead was condensed from a rule that was close to the power of the Buddhist sect and emitted a supreme light. A series of prayer beads fell towards the life spirit. However, in the next moment, the life spirit pinched them in his hand and instantly shattered them. "Monk, you're very annoying." The life spirit looked at the world. The boundless netherworld blood sea flowed in his eyes, as if it was a reflection in the world's heart. Instantly, countless evil thoughts filled the world's heart, polluting his Buddhist heart. The inner demons entered his body, making him feel as if all his thoughts were about to be destroyed by the inner demons. Puff! The world burned his primordial spirit and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. He paid the price of self-harm in exchange for getting rid of the evil thoughts completely. However, at that moment, a blood-stained bone spear appeared in front of him, freezing time and space. This time, the bone spear was not aimed at the world's heart but at his head. Just as the world was prepared to burn his blood essence and primordial spirit to resist with all his might, a beam of light formed by the power of yin and yang pierced through the void. With a loud bang, the bone spear was shattered. Chu Xiu and Ning Xuanji walked through the air. One of them was surrounded by yin and yang energy. Wherever he passed, all the power and the netherworld yin qi retreated. The other was surrounded by strange Dao patterns. They seemed to revolve around yin and yang, the five elements, and the power of earth, wind, water, and fire. However, in reality, the attribute of power was constantly changing. It could even assimilate all the surrounding power. Seeing that Chu Xiu and Ning Xuanji had arrived, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. You want to stop me too? Everyone is here today. Ning Xuanji stared at the life spirit and said with a frown, Dugu Weiwei, why did you turn me into this? You're not the same as you were 500 years ago. The life spirit said calmly, 500 years is enough to change many things. You don't know the true meaning of life and death, but I understand it now. You've been looking for longevity heaven for so long, but you don't know that longevity heaven is right beside you. Ning Xuanji still wanted to say something, but at that moment, the heavenly soul's body burned with endless demonic flames. He shouted, Everyone, attack. Don't give him time to delay. He has already controlled the power of the entire netherworld heaven. As the heavenly soul's voice fell, the demonic flames around him turned into countless demonic shadows that stood in the air. Each of them looked like a heavenly soul, and they used different demonic secret techniques to attack the life spirit. The heavenly demons were formless, and all techniques were formless. This was almost the most powerful demonic divine ability that Dugu Weiwei had mastered 500 years ago. The life spirit looked at all this coldly. He pinched a seal with his hand, and the spatial crack behind him began to expand without limit. In the end, the white bone throne under him emerged, and what appeared in front of everyone was the entire world. The boundless netherworld blood sea poured down, and the yin qi of the netherworld completely filled the entire space. If this continued for a long time, it would spread to the entire southern region, and even the entire Daoist. Countless ferocious demons and ghosts also appeared in front of everyone along with the netherworld blood sea, roaring. The netherworld heaven had descended. The life spirit had actually controlled a world with its own power. Even the most powerful cultivators of the ninth heaven could not resist this level of power. Even the Dao Master, the world's sovereign, the old barbarian king, and Meng Xinghe could only protect themselves even if they unleashed all their power. They could not fight against the life spirit. The only ones who were qualified to fight against the life spirit in the netherworld blood sea were Heavenly Soul, Chu Xiu, Ning Xuanji, and Zhong Shenxiu. The power of Heavenly Soul's 10,000 demons came toward the netherworld blood sea. Ning Xuanji's body was surrounded by countless Dao connotation and rules. As he gently pointed, it seemed as if he had opened up a separate world. Even the power of the netherworld blood sea could not submerge it. The small world went straight for the life spirit. Zhong Shenxiu's third eye bloomed with a chaotic brilliance. This time, it evolved into a giant chaotic sword that slashed toward the life spirit. Boundless sword qi. Chu Xiu was the last to make a move. He did not hold a saber. Yin and yang qi lingered in his hands, forming an extremely sharp long saber. With one slash, yin and yang were split apart, and the world was shattered. With this slash, Chu Xiu actually slashed out the legendary heaven-splitting charm. Even Heavenly Soul couldn't help but look at Chu Xiu. This kind of power was no longer something that the yin and yang origin could give to Chu Xiu. He had only gone to the East Sea. What did Ning Xuanji give him to make his strength soar to this level? The four of them attacked together. The power that each of them controlled almost surpassed the peak power of this world. The power of 10,000 demons tore apart the boundless netherworld blood sea, but it was completely extinguished by the yin qi of the netherworld with a wave of the life spirit's hand. At this time, Ning Xuanji's small world came crushing over. The life spirit blasted out a punch, drawing the power of the netherworld heaven to suppress it, but the life spirit itself was forced to take a step back. At the same time, Zhong Shenxiu's boundless sword qi had already fallen. Although it was directly shattered by the life spirit's vertical palm as a saber, the chaotic qi contaminated his body and eroded his power. Even the power of the netherworld heaven could not eliminate it for a while. At this time, Chu Xiu's heaven-splitting saber had already slashed down. Whether it was the netherworld heaven or any other world, everything was destroyed by this saber. The boundless netherworld blood sea was split in half by this saber. Even the life spirit was completely cut in half. Dao Master and the others were stunned. Victory? Before they could react, the body that had been split in half was integrated into the netherworld heaven. The life spirit's voice was like a thunderclap, coming from mid-air. I have merged with the netherworld heaven. If the netherworld heaven is not destroyed, how can you kill me? Chapter 1470. The combined attack from Chu Xiu and the other three seemed to have surpassed the limits of this world's power. But even so, they still failed to kill the other party. The Buddha's heart was as hard as iron, but at this time, he couldn't help but feel a sense of despair. He chanted the scriptures, not knowing if he was doing it for himself or for the entire upper and lower realms. But Chu Xiu and the others didn't show any despair at this time. Instead, the fighting spirit in their eyes exploded. So what if they merged with Yellow Springs Heaven? This was the strength of their life soul, but it was also an opportunity for them. If they were in Yellow Springs Heaven, they might not be able to do anything to the other party. But here, they were Daoist, not Yellow Springs Heaven. The four didn't communicate, but they all thought of this at the same time. Heaven's soul formed a seal with his hands. As a large amount of demonic qi drifted out, it directly evolved into the 10,000 demon domain. At this moment, his body completely turned into the primitive devil cave. No, to be precise, it was a boundless demon domain that was even more powerful and terrifying than the primitive devil cave. Flowing light surrounded Ning Xuanji's hands. As the flowing light scattered, all kinds of power between heaven and earth took root in the entire Yellow Springs blood sea like seeds. Too many things were needed to create a world. Ning Xuanji couldn't control the boundless death intent in the Yellow Springs blood sea. What he controlled was vitality and the operation of the rules of power. Raising his hand, Ning Xuanji directly propped up a world in the Yellow Springs blood sea, a world that had just risen. From the third eye between Zhong Shenxiu's eyebrows, boundless chaos qi burst out. But this chaos qi didn't attack but devoured. The boundless Yellow Springs death qi was devoured by the chaos qi. No matter how hard they struggled, they couldn't break free. In the end, Chu Xiu directly formed a seal with his hands. The power of the two yin and yang origins in his body completely burst out. The power of yin and yang rolled back, and the entire world was dyed black and white. The power of the two extreme yin and yang origins stirred the entire Yellow Springs heaven, recreating the chaos and recreating the world's origin. The power of the four people went straight to the power of origin of netherworld heaven. The life spirit that was integrated into it let out an unwilling roar, but it could only watch helplessly as the power completely devoured the power of netherworld heaven. The forces of both sides intertwined in mid-air, and everyone was already giving it their all. The power of the life soul's primordial soul had completely fused with the Yellow Springs blood sea. The heavenly soul also began to burn its qi, blood, and primordial soul to expand the demon domain. Even Ning Xuanji, who had always appeared indifferent, had a grave expression on his face. A thin layer of sweat had even appeared on his forehead. Although Zhong Shenxiu didn't seem to have changed, the primal chaos divine light in his eyes gradually dimmed. Only Chu Xiu was still pushing the power of yin and yang to the extreme. Two huge yin and yang energies transformed into dragons that tore and strangled each other in the air, extinguishing the power of the yellow springs. Chu Xiu did not let go even though his body had already suffered a backlash from the yin-yang force, causing fine cracks to appear on his body. These terrifying energy fluctuations almost shattered the entire void of the southern domain. The world sovereign and the rest raised their heads, their eyes filled with shock. This level of power was not something that they could interfere with. After an unknown amount of time and space seemed to freeze at that moment. All the power stagnated in mid-air. The next moment, a powerful and violent force erupted, completely annihilating the entire southern domain. But at the same time, the boundless Yellow Springs Blood Sea was also completely annihilated. Even the surrounding space channels had been destroyed by this force. Chu Xiu's group of 4 descended. All of them seemed as though their powers were about to be depleted. The world sovereign asked, "Has the one in the Yellow Springs heaven been completely dealt with?" Ning Xuanji snorted lightly and said, "Otherwise?" He still made a wrong step. Although he is powerful when he fuses with a world, his strength is built on the foundation of that world. His upper limit is already fixed. Dugu Weiwei has walked a dead end. He has already reached the end of this road. The Dao Master nodded his head in understanding. At this moment, he did something that no one expected. He actually controlled the heavenly cycle stellar array and the 3 primordial chaos array to envelop Chu Xiu. No one could react to the world sovereign's action. At this time, the world sovereign actually attacked Chu Xiu. Was he crazy? Ning Xuanji clearly stood on Chu Xiu's side. With the existence of Heavenly Soul, even if the world sovereign took advantage of Chu Xiu's exhaustion and successfully launched a sneak attack, did he think that he could still leave? Moreover, why did he attack Chu Xiu? Could it be that the 3 primordial palace was going to dominate the upper and lower realms? But did he have the strength to do so? Just at this moment, Chu Xiu, who had been sitting cross-legged on the ground and recovering his strength, suddenly opened his eyes. It was as if he had been prepared for this a long time ago. The power of yin and yang erupted, isolating the formation. "I thought you would wait before making a move. You just finished off the one in the Yellow Springs heaven. Are you already so impatient?" Chu Xiu did not say this to the world sovereign. Instead, he looked at Heavenly Soul. Everyone present was stunned. What was going on? The 2 of them had just killed a life soul, and now they were going to fight each other? A look of surprise flashed in Heavenly Soul's eyes. Then, the aura on his body suddenly changed, and his power began to increase. Demonic qi surged into his body, and his power actually increased to the level of Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago, which was comparable to the peak of Dugu Weiwei. At this time, the world sovereign's sneak attack had failed. He stood silently behind Heavenly Soul. This change was simply dumbfounded. When did the world sovereign have anything to do with Heavenly Soul? When did you start to realize? Chu Xiu said calmly, "Realize? No, I should say that I never believed you. You were the one who told me about the split of the heaven, earth, and life souls. The life souls are the real Dugu Weiwei. You were also the one who told me that they wanted to devour you and me. Although I did not really believe these things before, I did not doubt them either." "Oh, then when did you start to doubt them?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "From the moment I came into contact with everything about the real life souls. You and I are not Dugu Weiwei, but our life souls are not Dugu Weiwei either. 500 years may be able to change a person, but it will not change a person so much. I once asked Lu Jianghu what kind of person Dugu Weiwei was. Although he could not answer, he said that the real Dugu Weiwei would definitely not turn the 4 great demon lords who had always been following him into puppets without consciousness. Using the mark of Netherworld Heaven to revive a person, if the other party did not obey, they would completely become a puppet. People like Monk Longtu and Hua Nongyu chose to surrender. Why did the 4 great demon lords who were willing to risk their lives for the Kunlun devil cult not surrender? Because they knew that the person in front of them was not the real Dugu Weiwei. The previous Heaven Master and Gu Qingsheng both told me that he was not. Who was he not? Not Dugu Weiwei. When we were fighting with the life souls just now, he never said that he would devour you and me. Instead, you kept saying that and kept putting pressure on me. Tianhun said calmly, but these are just your speculations. Are you so sure that your speculations are right? Chu Xiu pointed to Tao Master and said, and him. In fact, from the moment Netherworld Heaven was opened, I felt that there was something wrong with Tao Master. It was too much of a coincidence. The location of Everlasting Heaven was calculated by Tao Master, but it turned out to be Netherworld Heaven. How could such a coincidence happen? Moreover, I knew Tao Master's character from the Three Pristines Temple. How could such an extremely strong person be willing to listen to my command so easily? Even with the pressure of Netherworld Heaven, it was still somewhat suspicious. Thinking of Tao Master's order to not let others touch Dugu Weiwei's essence and blood, it was even more suspicious. Therefore, when you were not paying attention, I specially sent someone to the Dalu Ocean to ask Qin Baiyuan who had entered the spirit cloud realm in the past 500 years. Although Qin Baiyuan was not the sect master at that time, anyone who entered the spirit cloud realm, including the disciples of High Heaven sect, would be recorded. For so many years, apart from the disciples of High Heaven sect, there were only two outsiders who entered the spirit cloud realm. One was me, and the other was Tao Master when he was young. Rather than saying that I am your successor, it would be better to say that Tao Master is your successor. The World Venerable and the others looked at Tao Master in shock. They never thought that Tao Master was related to this matter. Even after descending to the mortal world, Tao Master's series of actions were actually using them. Tao Master sighed and bowed to the World Venerable and the others. Everyone, please don't blame us for our own Master's actions. Although the other things are fake, I believe that Master will lead us to the real everlasting heaven and create a new era. The World Venerable and the others looked a little unhappy. They had been fooled. To be precise, they had been fooled for hundreds of years. Along the way, Tao Master had directly crushed all the Daluotian martial artists of the same generation. It was not only because of his amazing talent, but also because he had the guidance of Tianhun. Tianhun shook his head gently. Being trapped in the spirit cloud realm, it is difficult to communicate with the outside world. It is indeed easy to reveal flaws, but these are still just guesses and inferences. Chu Xiu sighed and said, yes, they are all guesses. But I went to Netherworld Heaven and saw a person in the mirror on the dark side of Netherworld Heaven. Who? Dugu Weiwei. The World Venerable and the others also looked at Chu Xiu. They also wanted to know, since the life soul was not Dugu Weiwei, and neither was Tianhun or Chu Xiu, then who was it? Even Ning Xuanji couldn't help but ask, could it be that Dugu Weiwei is really dead? A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. Dead? He is not dead, the Devil Lord is not defeated, and no one can kill Dugu Weiwei. Dugu Weiwei had chosen the most extreme path, which was to sever all connections between himself and this world, and completely transcend. You said that in the end, Dugu Weiwei split into 3 souls, but in my opinion, it is not the case. Although the 3 pure palaces Qi turning 3 pure ones is strange, to put it bluntly, it does not deserve such a strange effect. You and I should be the cause and effect connection between Dugu Weiwei and this world, the past, the present, and the future. At the same time, it also represents the opportunity that Dugu Weiwei left for the 3 of us. You are in the Dalu Ocean and have the most complete inheritance of Dugu Weiwei's memory. The world thinks that you are Dugu Weiwei, so you are the past. The life soul is in Netherworld Heaven. That is the path that Dugu Weiwei might take after discovering Netherworld Heaven. It represents the present. My memory was completely erased in the reincarnation of time and space. I appeared in the lower realm 500 years later, representing the future in the world of great battles. You represent Dugu Weiwei's past. You should know all these things, but the life soul in netherworld heaven does not. Dugu Weiwei has already transcended, and the three of us are already independent individuals. There is no need for us to devour each other at all, because even if we really merge, we will not become the real Dugu Weiwei. But before Dugu Weiwei transcended, he had actually given us a chance to reach the peak. The life soul controlled netherworld heaven and became the lord of a world. Unfortunately, he went astray. In 500 years, it seemed that he controlled netherworld heaven, but in fact, he was also affected by netherworld heaven and turned to the dark side. This time, he came to assimilate the Daoist and the lower realm into netherworld heaven and become an alternative, immortal. I am in the lower realm and have the inheritance of the devil cult. If there were no accidents when I came to the Daoist, I would still be the cult leader of the devil cult and rule the entire lower realm. And you've also taken the wrong path. Dugu Weiwei arranged for you to stay in the Daoist. It seems to be a seal, but with your strength and scheming, it should not be difficult for you to escape, just like how you cultivate a Dao master. If you can cultivate a Dao master, why can't you cultivate many Dao masters to help you escape, and then secretly develop your power to control the entire Daoist? In the end, you used your prophetic ability to target me and the life soul. It is not the life soul that really wants to devour the three souls, but you. Chapter 1471. He understood everything that Chu Xiu had said when he saw everything reflected in the dark mirror in the netherworld heaven. Unfortunately, the life spirit in the mirror could not see the mirror. He had been completely assimilated by the netherworld heaven. He had taken the wrong path. He could only see himself in the mirror and the deathly silent netherworld blood sea. However, he still believed that this was the everlasting heaven that he had been pursuing. At this time, Tianhun suddenly laughed. You and I are not Dugu Weiwei, but you and I are very similar to Dugu Weiwei. Even our personalities are very similar. Since you already knew the news, you only revealed it now. Don't you also want to use me to get rid of the life spirit? Everyone is just acting. The only difference is who can act until the end. Chu Xiu said calmly, that person should be me. Because of you, I took the wrong path. Tianhuan's expression instantly became extremely gloomy. Took the wrong path? Why was the path that Dugu Weiwei had arranged for them was correct? Chu Xiu, you disappoint me. Although I lied to you at the beginning, there is one thing that I did not lie to you about. I asked you whether you wanted to be Chu Xiu or Dugu Weiwei. Your answer was that you were only Chu Xiu and could only be Chu Xiu. But now, you want to take the path that he arranged for you. What is the difference between you and Dugu Weiwei's puppet? When Dugu Weiwei cut off our three souls, to put it nicely, he completely cut off the karma connection with himself and completely transcended. But to put it bluntly, we are trash. We are a burden. He abandoned our three souls like a pair of worn-out shoes, but he is detached from the world. He is no longer in this world or even in the 5 heaven realms. Why should we follow the arrangements that he left behind for the rest of our lives? I told you in the spirit cloud realm that I am not Dugu Weiwei, but the great demon Dugu. As he spoke the last word, the demonic flames behind Tianhun surged into the sky. They replaced the yellow spring's blood sea from before and covered the sky. He had been hiding his strength all along. Chu Xiu gently shook his head and said, I didn't walk the path that Dugu Weiwei arranged for me. I've always been walking my own path. I don't think that the path that Dugu Weiwei arranged for me is right. It's fine if you don't take the path that Dugu Weiwei arranged for you, but you're taking the wrong path. You keep saying that you don't want to be Dugu Weiwei, but in fact, you are the one who cares about this the most. Among the 3 souls, you've been influenced the most by Dugu Weiwei. You haven't walked out of his shadow in the past 500 years. Instead, your state of mind has been twisted. Repent, you still have a chance. Tianhun laughed coldly. Have you become stupid after cultivating too many Buddhist sect techniques? I can obviously reach the peak, so why should I turn back? Do you think that I've been staying in the spirit cloud realm for the past 500 years, hating Dugu Weiwei and hiding in the dark to plot all this? You can't imagine what I've studied. Although devouring the three souls can't make me Dugu Weiwei, I can reach the true peak, the peak that the 5 heaven realms can accommodate. As Tian Hun's voice fell, he formed a seal with his hands. The yin qi of the netherworld that had been scattered around netherworld heaven surged out and integrated into Tian Hun's body. That was the power of netherworld heaven that the life soul had previously controlled. Since you and I are one, after you die, your power will naturally be controlled by me. It's so difficult to kill a life soul that has mastered the power of netherworld heaven. How can you kill me now? Half of Tian Hun's body was surrounded by the boundless devil qi that covered the sky, while the other half was the surging netherworld blood sea. At this moment, his power was even more amazing than the life soul. If Chu Xiu died, then the yin and yang origin power that he controlled would also be absorbed by Tian Hun without any hindrance. At that time, Tian Hun would probably be close to being invincible in the world. Moreover, he would be invincible in the world that could not be defeated by numbers. At the moment, everyone on Chu Xiu's side had exhausted their power, including Ning Xuanji and the others. However, Chu Xiu did not panic at all. He just shook his head gently and said, "Do you really think that my power is the yin and yang origin power? Even if I give you my true power, you won't be able to control it." As Chu Xiu gently drew a line in front of him, a crack in the space opened up. What was revealed was not a pitch-black void, but a scene of the entire human realm. Eastern Qi, Western Chu, and Northern Yen. Countless living beings and creatures in the entire human realm existed within it. As Chu Xiu flipped his hand, the crack in the space opened up like a painting scroll. The mountains, rivers, and earth were all within it, and it shrouded Tian Hun. The power to descend to the human realm. When did you master the power to descend to the human realm? You said that you went the wrong way by integrating your life soul into netherworld heaven. Now, you are still the same as your life soul. Tian Hun roared in disbelief. Boundless devil qi and the surging netherworld blood sea met the mountains, rivers, and earth. The void seemed to be split into 2 worlds. Chu Xiu said calmly, "Who told you that I control the power to descend to the human realm? To be precise, this is the power of those living beings and people who descend to the human realm. Their luck belongs to me, so I will help them protect the mountains, rivers, and earth." Tian Hun's path was wrong because netherworld heaven was the dark side of the world. It was a world without life. A world with living beings was the real world. A dead and silent Yellow Springs heaven would only assimilate him. You think that I control yin and yang, but in fact, I control life and death. Back then, Chu Xiu had stepped into the 9th heaven with the power of destiny and seen all living beings descending to the human realm. He had comprehended the true mystery of the origin of the world, which was the power of life. However, what really made Chu Xiu sublimate was what he had seen in netherworld heaven. It was a mirror that represented the dark side. It was the process of life and death. After so many years, Chu Xiu was the only one who saw the power that represented life and death in this world. Previously, because netherworld heaven was controlled by the life soul and his body had merged with netherworld heaven, Chu Xiu could not compete with him for power. Now that the life soul had died, Tian Hun could control this power. Naturally, Chu Xiu could also control it. Although he had not reached a transcendent realm like Dugu Weiwei, he, who had mastered life and death, had reached the peak of the power that Tian Hun had said the 5 heaven realms could contain. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, the netherworld blood sea that had been lingering behind Tian Hun turned around in an instant. It wrapped around Tian Hun along with the mountain river earth god that had descended to the human realm. The power of life and death rotated. Any living being in this world could not transcend it. This was invincible power. Truly invincible. Even if all the warriors in the world attacked together, they could not break through this power. Of course, if they all died, their destiny and vitality would disappear. This meant that Chu Xiu had lost this power. No. Amidst the attack of the power of life and death, Tian Han let out an unwilling roar. After planning for 500 years, he was not willing to be Dugu Weiwei's substitute. He even wanted to surpass him. However, in the end, he realized that everything had been wrong from the beginning. Under the rotation of the power of life and death, Tian Han's body completely dissipated in this world, leaving only a wisp of demonic aura floating around. Chu Xiu flicked his finger gently, and the demonic aura also dissipated between the heaven and the earth. Perhaps after a few decades or centuries, someone would obtain this wisp of demonic aura by chance and embark on the path of a demon master. However, all of this was no longer important. After Dugu Weiwa had transcended, he had returned the power that he had obtained from the 5 great heavenly realms. Returning this strand of demonic qi to this world was where it should go. Everyone present still looked as if they couldn't recover from the shock. But in the end, everyone revealed a bitter smile, including Ning Xuanji. After fighting for 500 years, the so-called Great Tribulation, the so-called world of great battles, was actually just a mess left behind by Dugu Weiwei. Even Ning Xuanji had to admit that although they had fought for half a lifetime, he was not as good as Dugu Weiwei. When Chu Xiu turned to look at Dao Master directly threw the formation to Meng Xinghe and bowed to Chu Xiu indifferently. Cult Master Chu has now reached the peak. Milord has lost, and I have also lost. However, only I know about this. 3 Pure Temple is innocent. I am willing to disperse my cultivation and return to the dust. I only hope that Cult Master Chu can let 3 Pure Temple live. Having seen this level of power, Dao Master could no longer raise any thoughts of resistance. Back then, he was just curious about what the powerhouse who almost overturned the entire Daoist 500 years ago looked like. As a result, he entered the Divine Cloud Realm and embarked on a path of no return. Of course, this path was chosen by Dao Master himself. He had always believed that Heavenly Soul would succeed and bring him to the real peak. Unfortunately, he still lost in the end. Dao Master had already accepted the outcome. Since he had lost, he might as well lose with dignity. At least, he could leave 3 Pure Temple a way out. At this time, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Enough people have died today. It is a pity that you, with your cultivation at the peak of the 9th heaven, will return to the dust at this time. The entrance between the Daoist and the human realm needs to be guarded. You will guard there until you pass away. You will not be allowed to leave this temple for the rest of your life." At Chu Xiu's current realm, he had really taken life and death grudges lightly, or rather, it was no longer necessary. Dao Master lowered his head and bowed deeply to Chu Xiu. "Thank you, Cult Master Chu." At this moment, Zhong Shenxiu suddenly said, "Since you have reached the peak, you should go to that place to have a look." "What place?" Zhong Shenxiu said slowly, "Freedom Heaven, or what you call Longevity Heaven." Everyone present was stunned. Longevity Heaven, was there really a Longevity Heaven? Zhong Shenxiu looked at the crowd and gently shook her head. Longevity Heaven is different from what you think. You can't go in either, but Chu Xiu can. As she spoke, Zhong Shenxiu looked at Ning Xuanji. You can too. Then where is Longevity Heaven? There was only curiosity in Chu Xiu's words, but no desire. At his current realm, he could already see things that many people could not. The so-called longevity did not exist at all. Zhong Shenxiu's third eye opened, tearing a space portal filled with chaotic qi. This is Longevity Heaven. As she spoke, Zhong Shenxiu took the lead and stepped into it. Chu Xiu and Ning Xuanji did not hesitate and followed closely. With Chu Xiu's current strength, there was indeed nothing to fear. However, when he saw Longevity Heaven in front of him, Chu Xiu was still shocked. In his imagination, Longevity Heaven should be a paradise on earth, or rather, it should be said that in everyone's imagination. But in reality, what appeared in front of Chu Xiu was a dead silent world. There was no vitality, not even a drop of water. Grayish-white rocks were everywhere, and occasionally, some dilapidated buildings could be seen. Even the entire longevity heaven did not have any elements such as yin and yang, the 5 elements, and so there was not even wind. It was so quiet that it made people panic. Moreover, Chu Xiu also discovered that the mountain that Zhongxinxiu had used to seal the Yellow Springs heaven should have been dragged out from the longevity heaven. This is longevity heaven? Zhongxinxiu nodded and said, longevity heaven is the beginning of the 5 great celestial realms. This is the place where the real immortals exist. Their lifespans are easily tens of millions of years. The cultivation of martial immortals in longevity heaven is just the beginning. Ning Xuanji was dumbfounded and said, then, why did longevity heaven become like this? Because there is no restraint. Zhongxinxiu said indifferently, the immortals plundered the luck of the world's mountains and rivers without limit, eventually leading to the decline of the luck of the mountains and rivers. Their longevity was the decline of the everlasting heaven. The final outcome was what it was now. The world had weakened, and all the celestials were connected to this world by karma. None of them could do what Dugu Weiwa did, completely severing their connection with the world. Hence, they all perished together with the longevity heaven. The power that overflowed when longevity heaven died created the other 4 worlds, but each world is not complete, so there was the great ancient calamity, and the netherworld heaven, which is dedicated to containing the death chi. Then you are? Chu Xiu looked at Zhongxinxiu with a trace of curiosity. The immortals were already dead, so who was he? I am not a human. Zhongxinxiu pointed to himself and said, I am a living being condensed by the last immortal emperor of longevity heaven with the last trace of longevity heaven's power to monitor the karma of the other 4 worlds, so that they will not repeat the mistakes of longevity heaven. But now, the karma has been completely disturbed. You are the one who has the ability to change the karma of the 3 realms, and Ning Xuanji is half of it. So I brought you here. I can no longer see how the karma of the 3 realms will work in the future. It all depends on your choice. Chu Xiu looked at Ning Xuanji, who waved his hand and said, don't look at me, I don't plan to get involved in the affairs of this world from now on. I don't know if the path I chose is right, but at least I will walk it to the end first. As for you, what are you going to do? Are you going to transcend and go to other worlds like Dugu Weiwei, or continue to stay here? Go to other worlds? Chu Xiu shook his head gently. The world of his previous life might really exist, but to him, it was just a dream. My power comes from this world, where else can I go? Now that both the upper and lower realms are in a mess, I have to sort it out first before thinking about other things. Oh? What are you going to do? Ning Xuanji asked. Chu Xiu pointed to his feet, the example of longevity heaven is right in front of us. If we don't control it, I'm afraid that our descendants will really be cut off. So I'm going to reseal the Daoist to balance the power of the upper and lower realms. The same sect can have inheritances in both the upper and lower realms, but the martial artists in the lower realms can only cultivate to the real pellet state at most. Once they break through to the true fire spirit refinement, they must go to the Daoist to cultivate. It can't be a waste for the Dao Lord to guard the portal. He can monitor the ascension of the lower realm martial artists to the Daoist and prevent the Daoist powerhouses from descending to the lower realm. Ning Xuanji nodded and said, Ascension? That's a good idea. By the way, I'm a monk, so why should I care about my descendants? You don't seem to have any descendants, so why are you afraid of losing your descendants? Chu Xiu smiled and said, what if there is one in the future? With that said, Chu Xiu looked at Zhongxinxiu again, what about you? What are you going to do in the future? Zhongxinxiu said, I don't need to monitor the cause and effect anymore, so I'm going to try to be a real person. It's a very painful thing to have too much cause and effect in my head. I can't let myself have any emotions. I have to maintain the balance of cause and effect at all times. There are too many things in my mind, so I often get lost. It should feel good to let go of all this now. Chu Xiu turned his head to look at the deathly still longevity sky. Then, he stepped through the door. Let's go, the world of great battles is over before it starts, but next, it will be a new era. End of the book. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.